So now we're going to enter into this strange world here called the Owl Moon Lab.
We are in the city of Port Townsend and giving a Bigfoot talk.
And so this place has got the vibe back here.
We have astrologers come in, we have mediums, we even do some tarot ourselves.
Well, I see a Squatchin shirt here. So 2 of them. You should sell these, by the way, right? Right. So, I mean, Wi-Fi is invisible. Tesla's been talking about it for years. This is just a part of a small example to turn on a light switch on a kid's head, right? Like for me, it was seeing Roy Neary in Close Encounters of the Third Kind building the mashed potatoes, you know, Richard Dreyfuss's character, and him saying, this means something. So I did take an intermission here. By the way, does anybody need an intermission? Are we good? Are we good on time? Are we cool?
Totally good on time.
Okay, cool. As soon as I came back, I pretty much went to this place called the Owl Moon Lab, and it was based upon an email on Facebook or a message on Facebook from this retired construction worker who said, hey, I heard about those footprints in the mud. I moved up the road. I'd really like to go Bigfoot, and my brother thinks I'd be good at it for some reason. I'm a retired contractor. And as soon as he said that, this production team out of Portland got a hold of us and basically heard that there was some Bigfoot action happening in the Cottage Grove area, and they wanted to know if we could tell our story. And so the name of this documentary is called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. You can find it on YouTube. And this is when we nicknamed this place called the Owl Moon Lab. Now the reason we nicknamed it this area, there's Daryl with his little dog Izzy, is that when Daryl and I first met on like day 2, or that first week, he drew an elk tag in February, which is kind of unheard of. It was for a section of land in Cottage Grove. I'm not a big hunter. I'd like to be, actually, but I'm not. And so I said, well, let's go Bigfooting, and you can go elk hunting. And if you bag an elk, maybe I'll bag a Bigfoot evidence here. And so I'm sitting shotgun, he's driving. It's a beautiful February day. It's actually like Good Friday. Yeah, it's Good Friday. It's like 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's getting late. Actually, it's earlier than 7 o'clock. We didn't find this evidence till 7 o'clock. And what we found is divots in the mud off to the right-hand side of the road. As we're about ready to give up on the elk hunt, we find, I say, Daryl, back up the truck. There's like these weird, looks like somebody dribbled a basketball in the mud here. So again, with a scale object, dollar bill, right? Like, if you don't have plaster, if you don't have hydrocal, if you don't have a camera, a good one, at least you've got something here to do like a physical scale. In this case, I didn't do depth because the reason I didn't want to get in here is that as I leaned in, I could see hair flow. I don't know if you can see these striations on this Goodwill TV, but there's beard hairs here. See these little curly cues here and here and here? Well, there's what appeared to be leg hair from a knee that dropped in the mud in recently, because the one to the left of it was caved in. It looked like it just folded in on itself. And so these were 5-inch deep, 6 inches wide, 8 inches apart, flowing hair, loose hairs embedded vertically, so not just laying flat. They're actually poking up as though something had resting hair growth, stapied away from its patella area into fire clay is what they call that. Very fresh. Here's what they look like after we spent the evening casting these impressions in the mud. We were up to like 2 in the morning trying to make sure that they didn't crack. I mean, like they're this big, right? Like this was a whole bag of plaster. I don't think we had hydrocal on us. Here's what they look like. Again, shadows are going to help you in the end, showing things like the bony protuberance right here, if this is bone. We can't be sure what it is, except we did have the hair looked at, and we pulled those hairs out as forensic as possible with brand new tweezers and gloves, envelopes. The whole thing was documented on camera and delivered to a gal in Canada that runs the Hominid Enigma program that works with the Olympic Project. Her name's Cindy Dosen, And I said, Cindy, don't tell me what the results are. Let's record the whole thing on camera. If it's a bear, if it's a cow, if it's a human. I didn't think it was a human because they were big. I said, just tell me, because it's all about the process. It's not about the evidence. So we documented the process. And she got on webcam with us when I was doing a live show, and she said, this is hair number 6 out of 200 samples I've looked at that comes up as there's nothing in the data set for us. It doesn't match anything in the data set. It's not a deer, an ungulate, a bear, cow. It's not elk. It's not a coyote. It's not a human. And here's why. She gets into the particulars here, not so much of the anatomy, but you can see some of the similarities here that were coming out. In particular, how the bend was happening in the knee. But it had to do with the inner core of the hair that we sent her, which in this case we sent her a root. Here's the base of the hair, and then here's the inner shaft. And this is called the medulla. And my understanding here on the report is that Sasquatch hairs have a broken shaft in the inner core of the hair. It's not fully cored out or together. And so here's the initial report that she wrote up with us. I mean, she put her name, her date behind it, and I said, Cindy, thank you for doing that. You don't really know me, and you know that I'm a weirdo. I talk about the stranger stuff, and you're willing to do this because the data didn't lie. Now, was this a DNA test? No. We didn't have that DNA money. We had post-stamp and a Hanukkah card money that we sent her with a hair hidden inside the Hanukkah card, because you can't send biologicals out of the state. You kind of have to send a Hanukkah card with a gift inside of it. We're just now looking over a study here done by a veterinarian who's looked at suspected Bigfoot hair. And this is her report saying, yes, this is unclassified hair.
Tobe, I'm sorry, I know I missed the beginning of the thing, but so the damage that was being done to the property and all of that, then that all happened before you got these knee prints in the sand?
No, in fact, this is the part I missed over, is that the knee prints were kind of like your haunted doll. The knee prints supercharged the area, I think.
So then they came to find you, sort of?
I think, there's an interview on our YouTube channel, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, the YouTube channel, right? And Yakima Native American Mel Skahan talks about bringing hair as a Yakima Native American, a Sasquatch hair, back home, and how his place got haunted afterwards. And so what we've noticed is that periodically, if you bring home, especially what seems to be biologicals from them, that you will supercharge your environment. Now, is that just the intention? I've had people say when they buy my Bigfoot heads, that their area gets supercharged with the phenomena, or the Bigfoot heads get moved from tree to tree or laid down. These things just happen outside of the Bigfoot world. Like if you bring home something from Roswell or Skinwalker Ranch, guess what? You got a problem, most likely. And so we think now we don't know, because the neighbors were talking. Now when I say neighbors, I'm talking about rural environment out in the mountains, right? Like, I don't know, Egg and I Road, picture that kind of area, right? And so there's a guy, Chris, who was a fertilizer farmer. We called him Wormy because he had worms in his dirt that he was raising fertilizer or ground for, I guess weed farms or something like that. And so he was kind of a crazy guy, religious fella too, and was saying that he saw a blue-eyed bear on 2 legs approach him. The gal in the yurt said that there was a strange thing throwing pine cones at her yurt. She put up a motion sensor light. Now, these 2 people are probably 120 yards away from one another to 300 yards away. So it's pretty far off. I mean, we could hear when Chris was up, or Wormy, but you'd not hear him drive away or anything like that because it's so rural. So this time, I'm a truck driver working for Dutch Bros, actually, delivering milk up in Goldendale and Yakima, back to Eugene, back to Cottage Grove, and dropping off, all those Dutch Brother goodies. And I would get these phone calls from Daryl basically saying, hey, while you're gone, we got these crazy sounds. And I think maybe you know, there's somebody around our property messing with us. He goes, but there's these other sounds that kind of sound like ticks, taps, clicky sounds. And so I got a recorder, he got a recorder, and these are the sounds that we recorded. Now those are kind of like typical Sasquatch power knocks or wood knocky sounds. Like the last one sounds like a Louisville slugger hitting for a home run. Well, this is what people describe in Bigfoot areas, although there's no video evidence, I don't even think photographic evidence of a Sasquatch taking a limb or a bat making a wood knock sound. I don't think that's what you're hearing at all. I think it's way more interesting. Here's more sounds. So these are isolated sounds here that you're going to see, not necessarily from the same day. And although that just sounds like an environmental sound, this is a locked down area where you shouldn't be hearing those kind of things happen. But maybe a bird's nesting in the garage, and maybe a bird did that. Well, there were birds nesting in the garage, and they were making funny sounds. So again, I'm pretty skeptical. But then you get into these kind of sounds here. Now, you may need to plug your ears. You're going to watch for the signature. See that sound there? So that was the garage kind of erupting. And so what we found is where we had the knee impressions inside the garage, that was the supercharged area. Not necessarily my trailer outside, not necessarily Daryl's house, but this green metal shop in between that was big enough to put 2 RVs in. The other thing that happened here is that we were tipped off that people were leaving out Scrabble letters and getting responses. A buddy of mine named Scott Taylor said he was working with a guy, I believe out near Elby, Washington, that was having constant activity. And what he was doing is he was taking Scrabble letters and leaving them on a stump, on a flat surface, and either posing comments or questions and leaving a pile of Scrabble letters there on the stump and getting responses. Now, according to researcher Scott Taylor, who I believe he was a Boeing engineer for over 20 years, lives out in Matlock now, retired, he said that the responses he was getting weren't coming back in English, they were coming back in Aramaic. Now, what does that mean? Like phonetically, they were spelling out something that is a spoken word of Christ, right? Like, I mean, Christ spoke in Aramaic, if you ever watch The Passion of the Christ. It's kind of like a dead language, like not a lot of people that I know speak Aramaic. And so what are Sasquatch doing out in, you know, near Elby, if that's what the phenomena is at all? Now, maybe somebody came out there and, you know, did a trick on him, but it got our mind working here, is that this is private property, and so actually Scrabble letters are pretty hard to find, so we ended up finding some blocks ourselves, and these are just tiny little blocks, like super tiny. And so if you see here, I went on every edge of these here and made my own Scrabble letters here. And so this is after the tantamount of gifting came to us here. So this is what I stated. I left the extra letters here in the paint jar and then left the area. And then a little bit later, I don't remember how many days, letters were taken and something responded here in kind. Now, why do I think this is a response? It's because it's all in a row, right? Like, if it was a crow, I don't think they would have put them all in a row. And by golly, to me, this almost says something here. Can anybody guess what I think this might say as far as the bottom part here? Because I wrote thank you for gifts.
Welcome.
Yeah, but they used the number 3 and they turned it the correct way, because there wasn't just letters here, there were also numbers available here. And this here is a 4. Now, I don't know why they weren't able to spell it totally phonetic, but there was something to the fact that they didn't play by the rules. And one of the things that we did also is play tic-tac-toe with the phenomena. And so we took sticks in the same area, and they didn't play by the rules. Like, we left a turkey feather, you know, in one of the slots there, and they didn't care about the game. They just wanted to mess with the sticks and the phenomena there. So to me, that was pretty interesting. This is actually near the area where the phenomena would happen. This is the green metal shop here. Now, to me, this looks absolutely like someone effing with me. When Daryl showed me this picture here, it looked like something slid its foot in the gravel here to make a wide impression. This is some 12 months after we had a lot of experiences. But this to me is the smoking gun that's not at all what had happened here. This is a separate footprint from a little farther from where that last shot was here. And you can see the smooth heel down in here. Not only was the heel smooth, but the granular action of the gravel was pressed down into the hard pan. I do have a video of me showing me scooping these rocks back here, and you can see that the hard pan is nothing but dirt. So all these rocks here have been embedded down into the hard pan, which technically, like, if you're gonna try to pull a fast one on somebody, I don't think Daryl could have done that. Certainly not in the amount of time it took to find this track. And you can kind of see toes here too. So to me, what is this indicative of? Well, possibly that something here is displacing matter through a vibrational state, that there's something else happening here to leave a track. Now, Bigfooters will tell you like, wow, I found a track in the snow, but it was only like this deep. Or I found a track in the dirt and it was like, you know, over 2 inches, and it went straight down like it was pressed into the dirt. And I've seen the forest tracks. They're just like 90-degree dent into the forest depth. Now, is that blunt force trauma? Is that, pounds per square inch? Yeah, maybe, but this couldn't be. I mean, this is not big enough, first of all. What is this, like, I don't even remember how big the track was, 12 inches? It's not a size 16 or 17, so to me that just strikes as something else going on. This is where things get a little more interesting. Here is the paranormal side of things. We made it part 2 to our documentary.
Was that a real print that you think, or was that falsified?
No, to me, man, this right here shows evidence that there's absolutely no hoaxing going on, because you see rocks pushed down into hard pan. There ain't nothing that I know of aside from there being hydraulics. And I mean, maybe you could pull it off.
That would take tens of thousands of pounds of force
Yeah.
to drive if that was already compacted.
Well, and I can tell you right now that this is where, like, I had a visual sighting within this proximity, and we would get vocalizations, we would get language from here. There's some really strange stuff that was happening via the proximity of my trailer and the side of this garage. And to me, this is maybe some of the most underlooked evidence out there that there's something else going on with how they make these tracks.
I have a question about it.
Yeah.
Did you try to recreate the footprint so that you could see about like how much pound of pressure it would take in that specific area?
Well, I don't think it was a vibration.
Well, the thing is, you couldn't duplicate that. You can't press gravel down into hard pan with your boot.
So how much pressure do you think it would have taken to create that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
But not much with vibration, almost
Right,
not
with
at all.
vibration.
Well, if you had something in the shape of a foot and you dislocate, or I guess you vibrated enough,
Small.
yeah.
It'd have to be even more.
Like you'd have to really come up with an apparatus to do it, but we did it with the knee impressions. And so if you go to the Area 58 Museum in Oak Ridge, Oregon, you can see those knee impressions on display. And I show you my knees in comparison in the video footage of me trying to duplicate that. So for the hair to be anomalous caught on video as it was, that part was kind of a smoking gun. And so I tend to think that the handprints and all the stuff that came along with it here seem to be attached to the phenomena. Now, I still have a Tascam DR05 recorder going all the time. In fact, I'm trying to find out if this is someone hoaxing us and who they are. But then we have the bedroom, the guest bedroom, right? Like the cover of the book has these crazy purple handprints. Well, so in this bedroom, we put a recorder. And I thought, well, I'll just set it by the bedroom window, which is facing the cabin, facing the trailer rather. And we got an EVP of a child's voice that says, "I'm dead." And then we got a voice of something laughing. We came in here and we found these chalky white handprints below the door. Now, these are not chalky white because I've dusted them, I believe, with graphite. And this is me with a black light showing you what they look like. Let me play the video. Film. I want you to shine this light on it. Look at that. Now you get a full appreciation for all the details. What about on that door handle up here? Above it? Yeah. Well, that's probably worn off by now, the other stuff. A little under it. Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of underwhelming a little bit for people that have had this phenomena come to their house, but here's it, you can hold this. These are the actual prints here, and what I want you to look at here is how these fingers are kind of boneless, right? They kind of curl in, like there's an arthritis situation going on with this poor child, and he snuck into a guest bedroom. He shouldn't have been there, and he's got stained milk on his hand, perhaps. But these right here, dude, this is Dallas, Texas. This is Cottage Grove, Oregon. All these here are from a different part of the world. And so what happened was, as I was talking about Bigfoot, I would have these vendor spots open up. And one of the guys in Ocean Shores, Washington, was a guy by the name of Daryl Sims. Anybody know who Daryl Sims is? Daryl Sims worked with Dr. Roger Lear, removing implants. And so he had a booth there as an alien hunter, and he had lots of photographs. And I showed him the Al Moon handprints there, and he goes, look at that. And they match what he describes a lot of people that have implants taken, have missing time, have seen strange lights. Well, so here we are vacillating again between the two worlds.
An interior door?
Yeah, vinyl door.
Why would that be on the inside of it? I guess that's strange.
That's the strange part, yeah. So here's a photograph of that. We call this waxy sebum spirit jelly. It reminds me a lot of what people describe with ectoplasm. Dan Aykroyd talked about this on The Tonight Show back in the early 80s, actually. Dan Aykroyd was the brainchild behind Ghostbusters for a reason, because his family was extremely interested in the spiritualist movement, in fact, pretty high up in the spiritualist movement. And so this term has been around for quite a while, the spirit jelly term. And so this substance here, you're seeing different examples of it here on the abdomen of a person, on the arm of a person, the window, Dallas, Texas, Pennsylvania, Houston, Texas, 2 in Texas, so more things happening there. And so this, you cannot, you know, if a Sasquatch touches your tent, you're kind of stuck with him for a long time, right? Like, this is not coming off the tent. And even the paint of a car, this is another issue here, is that I've had the word human written on the side of my Jeep. It never came off. Now, could anybody walk by my Jeep and write the words human? Yeah, absolutely. But did they do it with boric acid? Like, you should be able to wash off finger smudges, but if it's this, what we call alba vernix, which is waxy sebum, this stuff doesn't come off. In fact, according to Doug Hychek, the creator of Monster Quest, under a microscope, this stuff is actually degrading what it's touching. So polymer paints, tents, hammocks, stuff like that. Those kind of things. It's hard to get this sebum off of substances.
You're saying it's deteriorating the molecular makeup of stuff?
Yeah, in fact, it mutates it, man. Like, that's why it won't come off. It actually has damaged it.
I wonder if that's what creates portals.
What do you mean?
Well, if it's deteriorating, it's a deteriorating property of some kind.
I mean, I like where you're going. I'm on Team Jeff, but
It's kind of funny that
displacing it.
you mentioned this.
wait, go ahead.
Gotta go soon.
Oh yeah.
But ever since I was a little boy, I was haunted, right? And there was a time that I had a sliding glass door, and on the inside of the sliding glass door, there would be like shadows, and stuff would like pick up and levitate, and like you would hear stuff talk out of it, and like I would have to like even warn like when I was a younger guy, and I'd bring girls home, I'd be like, look, like you're gonna hear stuff. And don't be freaked out, and but it would happen. But one particular moment, I woke up after like hearing conversations outside of the door.
Yeah.
And there was on the sliding glass door, there's a handprint with that stuff. I'd never even heard of this stuff before. And the palm was about this thick, and the fingers went out to like that long, and it was like it was acid etched into the glass. But yeah, so that's cool. Waxy sebum.
Yeah, waxy sebum. There's actually an article called Alba Vernix. It's written about this latent waxy sebum and what it does and maybe what it's comprised of. Now,
Like acid etched.
this is like,
It was that
I didn't pay him to come into the audience and talk about this. Yeah.
The cruise, I gotta get back to
Okay, everybody give it up for the captain. There you go. See, that's what I'm talking about, is you never know who is going to come in and confirm something for you here. And so this is just a big mystery. Like, I don't know what this substance is. I don't know what it's comprised of. We have different theories here we can talk about afterwards from very interesting people that may know what it is.
Are you suspecting it's a biological thing or an ectoplasm?
Well, so like, I call this phenomena wildergeist because it's between the two worlds of the poltergeist and the wild man. I don't know what that is. This is undocumented territory that is like, it's a classified science, I believe. And we don't have access to it. We're not read into it, what this is. But this is, for me, this is proof of there being some non-human biological, whatever that is. Maybe it looks more like the bottom part of my art than the upper part. Maybe those two hang out. I know Linda Moulton Howe says that abductees that were taken on craft have seen Sasquatch taken on craft with them. And so they are a part of the process along with the humans, not necessarily like the worker bees. Like, we have people in our videos, Henry Franzoni, that says Sasquatch are basically like the brawn of the operation. Like, yes, they're the wise wisdom keepers, but they're more like the mound builders. They're the old giants of old. Now, you can't get away from the stories of there being giants, especially red-headed giants. That goes back to, Mesopotamia. It goes back to the Green Man. I have an effigy here. I mean, really, the first Sasquatch looks more like what you would see on a church, right? Like this old image here, the Green Man or the Wild Man, you'd see on a fountain, the top of a church steeple here. But you get in the history of what's going on with why these lips are pursed and whistling. You get into like the idea of like the siren, something bringing children in generally, if you want to be honest. The Native Americans would go on to say that some Sasquatch are cannibals and abduct children. In particular, like the Canadian clan up there were total cannibals, right? Like, there's whole documentaries being made about one particular tribe that had to deal with cannibals up there.
Have you made a logical, is it like the Nephilim?
The what?
The Nephilim, I think they're pronounced.
I don't know what that
I
is.
guess this the oldest giant myths.
Oh, Nephilim.
Angels and men,
Nephilim.
when they would make them.
Is that what you're looking at? Okay. Yeah, so that's, if you go back to the Book of Enoch, in fact, back there you have two copies. If you get into what I would call dangerous texts of Scripture that have not been necessarily put inside the King James Version, Enoch gets into a lot of what would be described as giants and the angels of the fallen angels that basically had sex with women when they came down here and made hybrids. When I moved...
You're describing a creature that kind of exists between our realm and the divine. And is it interesting? Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go back to Scripture, it talks about men feeling like they were grasshoppers in the sight of these men. And there's some crossover between what happened in Cottage Grove and the Old Testament. Maybe we can get into that after the show. When I moved from Cottage Grove, just to show you, the phenomena did seem to present itself in Port Orchard. I met somebody, moved to Port Orchard, and on the pillars of the house, now she says those were not there before I moved there. They look human-sized to me. They've got creases in them here that look like dermal ridges. I think she even called the construction crew and called her ex, and nobody knew what we were talking about. We never had this tested. Nobody chipped the paint. They were still there the day the cabin sold. Here's the handprints from inside, as you pointed out. Now, when I moved again from Port Orchard to Squim, we noticed something near the back door. We asked the previous owner if there was any white chalky reason for more fingerprints to be at the back of the house. What got me here is the width of the dermals. I mean, you can see mine here. Now, this isn't scaled up here as much as possible for you to see, but you can see the width here. This is my finger next to the actual dermals we found, and it's twice the width of my dermals on that shot. I don't know what that is. I have a feeling this is more examples of
March.
Yeah, so what you see there, and it's a little bit tougher to see on this TV for whatever reason, is an oily fingerprint with a red hair attached to it. Here's after I took a really bad forensic dusting of these impressions here. Mainly just got away with this finger here, which is a better part of like 8 or 9 inches from, the stem of the finger here. And it has this bulbous tip to it. And again, with this kind of rubbery, thin, spindly quality.
You right?
All right, so Daryl just mentioned that he found something new that he hasn't seen before. And it all starts in this door jamb. Now these are fingerprints here. Palm, 2 palms. Way up there. And then right here that's an entire hand there. And then look at this. These are
Now that we ruled out.
scratch marks. This product is less
That's
than
just fumbling for
2
the
months
key.
old. And look,
So there's a measurement of that. You guys got to see this here. I don't know. You can pass that around if you want to, but that's the handprint right here. The beginning of the pinky's way up there. Here's the infamous sausage fingers that we talked about earlier.
okay, what we're showing right now are these finger strikes on the back of the pickup truck where the spider netting was picked up and thrown out, and they look like fingers coming across the bed of the truck this way, which is a weird angle.
You can see the round tips
Yeah.
of them right here perfectly. I don't know if this is scruff.
Okay, now I can, oh, yeah, this is good.
See them right there? It was wet that morning, so they're a little bit drippy.
Get an appreciation for it. Let's see if I can count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that 1, 2?
This is 4, right?
3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you can almost see where the finger's pocketed right here and left a pocket of a dent. Like it scoops that way, like this.
Almost see the hair right there. Isn't that lines?
Yeah.
Maybe here too. Oh shit.
There may be DNA on there.
Well, there was. I could have done an eDNA sample easily.
Well, now you can definitely see it.
You do like your change colors like you do.
So what brought these out to us is that the bungee cord was actually broken on the back of the pickup truck, and they had thrown it behind the pickup truck in the gravel driveway, and so the 2 hooks on the bungee cord were broken. We were kind of used to getting weird gifts, but they hadn't really broken anything in a while. And so when it did this, it either stood in the back of the pickup truck and did it, which we saw no evidence of, or it reached over from the passenger side. And if it had a hand or an arm, it reached over without bringing its torso and rubbing the dewy side of the passenger's vehicle. So the measurement on the arms has to be greater than 4 feet for it to reach over like it did there and straddle. Now, was it trying to get the bungee cord loose here and it snapped it? I don't know. I wish we would have had a better forensic kit. Like, you can get a forensic kit on Amazon for less than $30.
You know, you make me wonder how much of this stuff in our daily lives we actually walk by and don't even see. So I'm thinking about my own place, and there's marks on the wall and stuff, but I never look at them like, now I'm going to go home, I'm not going to get to sleep. Look at every little thing and see if I can see something.
Well, you know, people ask, what's the easiest way to find out where they are? And the first thing I say is go to the place names, go to the strangest places on the map. Find an old map. Find places like Devil's Creek, Skookum Creek. The weirder, the more cultish, scarier sounding the name, the more promising it's going to be, because these old timers warned people not to go there and the natives warned them. And so the other way is to leave a recorder. Don't leave a camera. Leave out a frickin' dictaphone. Leave out your phone, you know, put it on record as far as audio. Whatever's going on here, we don't have permission to use a camera. I don't know why that is. Like, we left mirrors out in the woods and the mirrors were all taken down and flipped over. There may be something to the fact that they don't like their own image. I have to think that way. You know, not only did we see amazing things, Daryl was one of the first people I know that documented the Tic Tac in a Bigfoot area. Anybody know what the Tic Tac is? Like Commander David Fravor, 2008, I believe, off San Diego coast, reports seeing a UFO in the shape of like a propane cylinder or Tic Tac. Daryl actually got an image of that in the Al Moon lab. But mainly what we were getting is we were getting these inexplicable pieces of audio that were showing the complexity of how deep and long an EVP can be. And so these were happening in the digital layers, either on our camera equipment, on our voice recorder, or we were hearing them. And so this is like the layer cake theory that was shown to me and taught to me by now deceased author, scientist Henry Franzoni. He says if you want to engage the phenomena, you have to offer it a lot of doors. And that means you have to review everything. Like your camera equipment has audio, and so does your recorder. So you got to go to both sets of audio to see which one's working. This gets into like ghost hunters using old dictaphones. You know, you see these guys with like this old Panasonic from the dollar store that they swear by. Well, that's an old piece of gear. So that's what we were doing, is we were reviewing. So I got really good at reviewing 12 hours of audio because I needed a lot of sleep for being a truck driver. And so I got through about 12 hours of audio in about an hour and a half. And I would scrub through it on what's called spectrogram. And I was looking for Bigfoot stuff, not looking for ghost stuff. I bumped into the ghosts. And so what you're about to hear is a compilation of EVPs. Like, they don't make sense because they're in an isolated area, mainly this garage, and they're disembodied. They have this synthesized quality, this echoey quality, and they're conversational. But some of them are gaspy. Like when you hear an EVP, if you guys are familiar with electronic voice phenomena, it's like they're trying to gather up enough stuff to say something. And then yet it has this kind of synthesized quality. Is that breathy quality? Now, I think the last two EVPs are the same conversation happening. Listen to the last two EVPs, the one that sounds like a child, and then listen to the very last one after that, and tell me you don't think they're saying the same thing. Two different nights, by the way. Not this one. Okay. You hear that? So, anybody have any idea what they heard or what was said? Because what I hear is help me get back. Tell me if you hear that.
Get back to,
Let's see. Not this one. Help me. Listen to this. Hear that rolling sound at the end? Almost like something rolling across the frickin' garage. We would come across this sound more times than we knew what to do with. We didn't know what to do with it, but it turns out ghost hunters experience this rolling ball sound or stone rolling on stone sound. It's an underreported sound. It literally sounds like a stone ball or like something sliding on granite. I'll play it one more time. Pause. Anybody? Allie, what do you hear?
I hear Toby to help.
Well, now this could be interesting because I was burning the candle at both ends as a paranormal researcher. This is oddly addictive, right? Like the power of the ring is what we're talking about here. We're talking about ultimate understanding, possibly hidden knowledge. And what do you do with it? Well, you saw what happened to Gollum, right? I was slowly turning into Smeagol. And so here I was at 4 in the morning, knowing I had to work in a zero gravity chair, 30 degrees out with a wool blanket, waiting to hear that. We invited people to go into that garage and we would listen. We would have parties, paranormal sit-down parties, not seances, but we would lock the door. We would put them in there, run an AC cord, a 50-foot cord, into a speaker, have the dictaphone sitting in the middle of the shop, and invite people to turn out the lights and sit with the dictaphone. And we would hear voices and they couldn't. Or they would hear voices and we couldn't. And I think I have examples of that on here. People getting blown in their ear by something you could hear go.
What kind of recorders do you use?
So I use a Tascam. It's just a studio mic. Tascam DRO5 is what it's called. It's a kind of a Bigfooter's recorder.
Have you ever attempted mini disc players or just straight tape?
I would like to try straight tape. In fact, we have one at home. And so I think that magnetic part on the tape, is that what we're getting at?
Well, the tape is really, tape is really hard to manipulate the sound off of.
Gotcha.
So when you get something on tape, it's gonna be a more like you can sit there and take a tape and cut it and splice it.
Right.
But you're not gonna get that like when you get the tape running, you'll get a natural sound off of that. Mini discs are really nice because they have a really good recording sound to them. I used to DJ, I used to use sound, and one of the things that we do is when we record different practices and stuff, we record on the mini disc, and you can literally take and stop and cut the put a stop on it so you can come back and actually label. You can actually put in and label like your time frame or where it was on the mini disc. Like
Allie, get on eBay. Let's order one.
What's it called?
Mini disc players, mini discs. Yeah, they're they might be tough to find one. They're worth it. They really are worth it.
Yeah, it sounds like something new to play with. Alex, let's get one.
And if you use tape, if you use quartz crystal nearby it or with it, for some reason you get like clear.
Oh, really? See, now this is something I mess with too, because that camper I lived in, the camper itself became a little paranormal hotspot. It was supercharged when I left the Al Moon lab. For God's sakes, it had aspirated blackberry juice from a Bigfoot. Here's another more complex EVP. Now this. I can tell you that last little clip that we played there, I have a disc jockey buddy. I sent him that last clip and it destroyed his soundboard, like a very expensive soundboard. He was so distraught because it was the way that they were going to go on the radio that morning. And he said, never send me another audio clip again. Now, we did invite him out to the Al Moon lab because he was insanely curious after that. And so he heard with his own ears what happened to Julia the wine taster, who is also on the radio. And we had some extraordinary stuff happen here. And I think, like, again, there's well over 20 people now that have had experiences, including sightings of actual Sasquatch, like from me to Jeff sightings, right? We just played that moan. I won't go over that one. Here's the actual video from the moan that happened here. Now this moan, I didn't hear with my own ears. So what you're about to see right now is an example again of this layer caking here. So as my camera's filming this here, I'm just basically getting B-roll. And so this AC cord is going into the shop where the knees are. I'm panning over, looking for layer cakes. And I don't hear this. Now, how could I not hear that? I mean, why would I not hear that? So here's more damage. And I'll pan down, you can see a little mud strike.
Mud or grease. Another speck of mud or grease.
So that's some of the property damage. We're talking about some of the T-post here. Here's one of the T-posts that I was mentioning that got bent back into shape. I don't think that we necessarily got the precursor of that for whatever reason.
That was the repair that you did?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was, I don't remember which one it was. I think it was this one here. And this part here was bent too as well, but this was way more damaging. You can actually, we found a dingleberry on the top of the fence, like hairy poop on top of the barbed wire. And we got some audio, I think, of the whole event happening here. Let me see if I got it queued up. We also found really large urine streaks on the extension cord that was going out to supply my trailer. I mean, this one here is like, I don't know, that's a big urine streak and it trails off. Now, we did get video FLIR of a cougar, like a super cougar, and it wasn't too far from that, so did it walk along here and pee? Yeah, maybe. Here's some of the glyphs. We were talking earlier, Jeff, about your ruins over there in the corner. This is why I'm insanely interested in that, is that there were these strange marks. These were in front of my trailer. 3 look like eagle talon marks in front of the doorway. They would leave these interesting shapes here with these same 4 twigs, whoever they were. And we started to interact with them with objects. So like I would put stuff in the glyphs to see if they would like it or not. Here's some of the shapes that we would get.
What are those?
So they're twigs.
Spheres. No, the spheres that you...
Oh, magnetic balls.
Okay.
And we're waiting to see if they would get collided together so I could get it on audio, because they make a real sizzly sound when they come together. Why is there a rabbit associated? Well, people talk about the rabbit hole of the paranormal. Well, we were talking about actually getting a taxidermied rabbit for this art exhibit I was working on. And I was going to use the rabbit as an analogy towards the rabbit hole theory. And so we were looking on eBay, talking about, buying a rabbit, and this is what happened.
Oh my gosh, that was not there earlier.
It's not even injured.
So I was used to coming home finding weird shit, so I had the camera ready to go.
Yeah, I bet if we look here on the other side, we won't see any injuries. Can you flip it over? That has not been there very long either.
So here's the part of that that's weird, is that I found this right after I got out of my Jeep, walking into the trailer. It's right in front. There's no predation marks on it. There seems to be like maybe a rock embedded in the skull, but maybe an eagle dropped it and a piece of stone hit it. Maybe it came from high above. But we were just talking about a rabbit, and there's no bugs on it. It's like 90 degrees out. There should be wasp, or what I would call meat bees, predating on it. There's nothing. In fact, the glaze is just coming over the eyes. So Daryl said, well, thank God they didn't leave you a snake. You hate those things. So 3 days later, in the exact same spot. In fact, look for the circle where I drew where the rabbit was compared to where this happened 3 days later.
Yes! See where the dirt's moved? The worst thing they could bring me was a snake. And they brought one. That's
now the meat bees are just coming.
This is a little red racer. And it's exactly where the rabbit was thrown. And you can see by the disturbed area right here, this is where I put the little marker and the candle.
Now
There's
again,
no coincidences going.
this is right after I got home from work. Again, a cougar. People say we didn't leave cameras. Why? Well, we did. We left a FLIR sitting out of my trailer one night, and this is a really big mountain cat walking in front of me. There actually is a rumor about there being a hybrid monkey cat, a very legit phenomena. Comes out of the Klickitat Reservation near Hood River, actually, on the Washington side. And they're reporting getting a monkey-faced black panther about 5 feet at the shoulders. The town sheriff has seen it. If you go to Margie's Outdoor Post, there's actually a logbook of people that have witnessed a primate cat. It has bright yellow eyes, black like a jungle cat. So I don't know. Maybe we had a little jungle cat. This is some of the phenomena that we would get on photographs. You can look here what time and date it was. It actually, there's 3 photographs of it, none of it actually leaving frame. These boxes of light are reported in Bigfoot areas. We interview a witness, 2 of the witnesses actually, that see what looks like an orangutan standing in the middle of the road, and it turns into a box of light brighter than the sun, and it shoots off like a lightning bolt into the forest. Here's a little bit of our approximation in height and size. Daryl standing in the site. Now I thought maybe it was a headlamp to a truck, but we never saw the body of the truck. We never saw the thing leave frame. It was going from left to right. I said tic-tac, watch this. This is right over Bigfoot country, right over Daryl's house. Now is it doing anything extraordinary? No, but it's all wrong for a plane. Because we had planes all the time. In fact, we had fighter jets. We had planes going to Nellis all the time. They'd tip their wings down over Dorina. Shafts of...
That was your video?
What's that?
That was your video?
That's my buddy's video, Daryl, yeah.
Was that headed toward Nellis?
Yeah. Yeah.
From Area 51 to Nellis?
No, from the Pacific.
See what I was doing there though?
Yeah, going from Pacific. Yeah, that's right. We brought a psychic into the woods with us near the Al Moon Lab. She said, I got energy over here in the dense brush. Start taking photographs if you want. And so if you've ever been in the Olympic Peninsula in the backcountry and you've been in the forest, especially night hiking, seeing a light like that come out of the woods is pretty damn weird, because that looked like a door opening, you know. That's a photograph Daryl got. Things also took advantage, the hitchhiker effect, I think, took advantage of Daryl's phone and would leave strange manipulations of ethereal voices with no timestamp, no date stamp. They would be black videos. So just imagine opening your phone right now, going into your photos, and you see a video, and it's just this black video, no timestamp, no date stamp, and then you hear your voice coming out of this video in a language you've never spoken before. That's what you're about to hear. I think there's actually 3 weird voices.
Saw what's gonna happen. No, when they're out there, they gave my son.
We didn't know either, because we have mastication. To me, it sounds like someone chewing carrots. And then you have Daryl's voice, without a doubt, saying "Min Shah," and then this female that sounds like she's trapped inside like an episode of Tron or something, saying, "Now what's going to happen when they're out here?" And then the voice responds back, "They me sa," or something like that. And you have the constant chomping. So if all things are fair and Daryl's telling the truth, that's a weird piece of evidence. Play it again. Here's what I broke down.
Saw what's gonna happen. No, when they're out there, they gave my son.
So the weird thing is that this would continue to happen. I would actually have conferences during COVID on Zoom, on Restream, and sometimes Daryl would be busy, and so he couldn't come on. And one of those, he was having family over. And so you have to have a passcode to get in, especially to a paid Zoom meeting, which we did. And you'd have to have a passcode to get in. Well, Daryl didn't have any of that information. And as we're doing the conference and talking about Daryl and talking about this audio, as I'm talking about that audio, I see this pixelation rise from the corner of the screen, and Daryl's image suddenly appear in the pane of the window. And he's just like sitting there on the counter holding his baby, like doing stuff that you would do if your phone's sitting on the counter. Well, somehow, some way, the phenomena brought him into a meeting. There's no way you can pixelate an image up into the pane of a Zoom meeting that I know of. I mean, you do Zoom meetings. Is there an app for that, maybe? I don't know. But he didn't have the passcode, and he didn't even know he was on camera. So this is just getting to the point that the phenomena was engaging. I don't know, does anybody know who Lloyd Pye is? He had the Star Child skull in his possession before he died. He wrote a book called Everything You Know Is Wrong. Well, this guy worked with him, and he was our neighbor. And so Daryl and him, after I moved, I ended up leaving Oregon to Washington. Daryl and this other kid became buddies, and they were researching the Almoon Wilderness. Now, not the property, but the woods above. And one night, they were at a dead-end road, and they smelled death come in. And they said it smelled like death. And they said, then we saw these lights. And I said, okay, that's pretty freaking weird. All right. I said, let's go back. So I was like, take me there. So we went back that night, and I said, I heard that if we play certain tones and frequencies, maybe we can elicit a response. So we played Fear Inoculum by Tool, which is this crazy, if you ever listen to this song, it goes back and forth in your head and kind of puts you in an MK Ultra trippy state, like you don't need drugs when you're listening to this song. So we played that, and nothing happened except that audio. And so that audio, to me, triggered a response of an event, because as I was driving back to Washington, Daryl says, you'll never believe what was on my phone. These are other sounds that were recorded by Daryl and Daryl Adams only on his parabolic mic facing the Almoon Wilderness. Whoops. Looped over and over. I talked to you about the fence and the T-post and the dingleberry. Well, this is the audio from around that same time of day. And so if you can imagine, we were on a shoestring budget, and Daryl has his Sony recorder hooked up to a parabolic dish which amplifies sound, aimed at the wilderness. It was duct taped to a kitchen chair, sitting out on a summer day. And it was just a ritual. I would put a recorder up front by my trailer, he'd do the backyard, and this is what we got. Very bipedal sounding. It seemed to be sniffing the air. There's a percussive sound in the beginning. I don't know if you caught that, but the Louisville Slugger sound. So there was no approach of this sound. It didn't walk through the tall grass and make an approach. It popped, and then it thudded, and then it walked. So this is my theory, right? This gets into the crazier stuff, is that these things are accessing sacred portals, and that they can do it through thought, perhaps. Maybe they can do it through a tone. I mean, if you get into stuff like what they were talking about in Dune, Frank Herbert's novel, and how the Fremen could use their voices as a weapon, that kind of stuff, like sound is a weapon, whether you know it or not, that's already being used on you. Low frequency, perhaps, but this is something that Bigfooters have been talking about too, is hearing low frequency sounds that they can't actually hear, but they can feel and they initiate what's called the dread response, right? And this is something that killer whales can do, elephants can do, lions can do this. I talked about the blackberry sneeze. Here's evidence of that happening. Oops. And the wet mouth masticating here. Now the blackberries, you know, this is underneath the awning, right? So here's my camper, here's the awning out, it's a hot summer day, fresh blackberry juice, recorder right there. And blackberries going out to the main Weyerhaeuser Road like cookie crumbs. More electronic voice phenomena. No, we played that one. That was from the shop. Now, the other thing too is that there's not just vocalizations here. These things have a complex language. Allie and I think recorded language in Nia Bay about 2 weeks ago. If you stay to the end here, I'll play Olympic Peninsula vocalizations that actually sound like a complex language. Here's one from Oregon. 2 of them, I suspect. See how everything's happening under 1,000? Human vocals don't do that. They stair step up on spectrogram. These are way more condensed and they live generally underneath 1,000 hertz. Look at the way it whips. You know, when we have a conversation, we want to make a point, we're emphatic, and we're just again. Another thing, don't come back to the end. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds like a conversation that, you know, phonetically is called a terminal ending. Our latest projects involve the story of Ron Moorhead's story of the Sierra Sounds, where they talk about complex language at 9,000 feet. Since the 1950s, I believe this has been going on. We actually have a documentary coming out next year. There's Ron. Actually, it's not Ron, it's the Johnson brothers. And this is the shelter that they made back in the, I believe they made it actually in 1954. It was actually kind of bestowed to them as a possible good place to elk hunt by the Bass sheep herders that lived up that way. Here's us last year on horseback coming into the campsite. Never been on horseback in my life. Allie, you would have been proud. I jumped a creek just like Man from Snowy River. Unfortunately, there was a wildfire that ravaged this historic Bigfoot hotspot. Here's a little bit of the devastation. This is where the shelter was. You can see where the actual, you know, ropes were lashed around the trees. Unfortunately, that black and white is no more. There's us on site. And so why am I talking about this area? Well, this gets into the arbor glyphs of the High Sierras. Again, these are made by humans, the Bass sheep herders. They would use these aspen trees and alders to scrawl sometimes pornographic images. I didn't put those up here. A lot of pornographic images they were interested in. But they'd been around since the early 1900s. And this is just some of the wildlife here. But it turns out, you know, we had a death last year from one of the gals in our documentary, Sonia Zohar. She lived actually in Port Hadlock, and she just died last year of cancer. And before she died, she was in our documentary, and a week before she died, she kind of pulled me aside and said, oh, I'm going to tell you stuff that maybe you don't know about some of the areas you've been going. One that she said is that in the High Sierras, the Bass sheep herders worship Bigfoot. And I said, you mean the documentary we're making about Bigfoot actually has a Bigfoot link that goes back to the Bass sheep herders? And we don't have to reach for it? We don't have to pull it out of our you-know-what? She goes, no, like they worshipped Bossajon, the boss of the woods, a big hairy giant. Mm-hmm. So why is that, right? Like, you look into the Bass sheep herders and where they're from, it's not an American lineage at all. But yet the phenomena, again, goes back to you know, possibly the Nephilim. She also mentioned the Hairy Mary phenomena. She goes, I don't know if you know this, but in 14th century France, there's a lot of recreations of a red-haired giant that looks like the Virgin Mary. Did you know that? Did you know that? And I was like, no. She goes, yeah, there's lots of evidence. There's effigies, there's paintings of what appear to be a Mary-type figure with red hair. Lots and lots of images, but mainly, I think, from France. Now, do we know this is Mary? No, but I mean, she's crowned, she's cherubim. Also, interesting here is she's in a parabolic dish-shaped environment in two of these photos. I think that that's important. I think that has something to do with areas being supercharged, valley crescents, areas like that. This one's pretty wild. That's more Art Deco style. Also, I was in Expedition Bigfoot. I don't know if you guys watched the show. I was in season 5. I did my time on camera with Dr. Mayer, who's a primatologist. We were out in Ferndale, California in the rain for 5 days looking for Sasquatch. We did have some interesting stuff occur, and some of that was caught on camera. This was actually an episode, Allie and I did a live, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, in the place I call the Stairs to Nowhere. It's in the Olympic Peninsula. It's an abandoned homestead where we've had EVPs happen. Teddy Roosevelt apparently stayed in this cabin that is no more. All that's left is a stone staircase in the middle of the forest. And so I was like, well, this is super photographic. Let's leave a recorder here. And so when I left a recorder here, here's the audio I got. Now that I did slow down. Now this was also not too far from where I caught that audio. It's some kind of structure. It was wedged together as a teepee with mud kind of binding the ferns to the top of it. I guess we're going to get to the end of it here. If you guys are interested about the stuff we're talking about, including ghosties and everything in between, we actually are going to do a live show up the street here, Manresa Castle. And it's going to be, our launch day is June 7th, 6 p.m. to close. We're going to invite not only people that have had experiences at Manresa Castle, but that want to sit in a cool haunted environment, have a spirit with the spirits kind of deal. And the front desk is a wealth of, what's the gal's name? Amber Dawn? Amber Dawn is a wealth of information on the history of the builder, the founder, Mr. Eisenbeis, because it was a private residence, and the haunted history. Like, I've had stuff happen there. So this is the haunted speakeasy in Manresa Castle. This poor hapless soul has no idea who's coming at him here. This is known as the Babushka woman. She lives in the broom closet to the left, according to the people I've talked to, the house cleaners. This is an incredible photo. Like, this should not be, according to the person that took the photo. And it's blacker than black. You see, you know, the disembodied quality of it all. This is also Manresa Castle. This is evidence of one of these SLS cameras actually working. What you're seeing here is me actually approaching something on SLS, and what it seems to be doing is moving to the beat of Elvis Presley as I'm playing it at one of the podcasts I'm doing here. And as you can see, it's in my hand. And it seems to raise and lower based upon where I bring my hand. Now, of course, I can't see anything. So here I am in the background interacting with it. So that was a funny moment. Of course, I mentioned Olympic Strange Days. You can get a hold of us at A Flash of Beauty, the YouTube channel. I think we're getting close to 69,000, 70,000. Our latest video we did is a 2-part series that just came out yesterday, and it's all on Nia Bay and what happened to us, including this audio here I want to play from you, the Shaman Shack vocals. Kind of like a griping woman. That's what I hear, like. And another thing. A lot of finger wagging. Now this went on for over an hour, and it varied. But that's just from like 2 weeks ago. And again, on a contactee's property.
That's a bit like a coyote.
What's that?
That's a bit like a coyote.
Well, you know, it could be one of those things, man. I don't know. Maybe a coyote, maybe like a kid down the street.
It's actually kind of like...
But now going back to spectrogram, which you haven't looked into, spectrogram shows you this vertical hertz level of 1,000 compression that when a coyote does its vocalization, you can rule it out because it's constantly stair-stepping vertically, not horizontal. And so those...
A coyote. From a born and raised farm girl, I've heard lots of coyotes real close by. That was not a coyote.
It could have been a person though, but I don't think so based upon where it landed on the spectrogram. And the reason we were leaving a recorder there is because we heard in the middle of the summer what sounded like an engine block get thrown through the woods. I mean, whatever threw this object, the object had to be much bigger than everything in this room. It sounded like an engine block or a refrigerator get thrown in the woods. And it was right as we left one of these hot spots. So that's why we were recording in that area. If you get a chance to watch this episode, I just implore you to do it. It's called The Shaman Shack. It's on A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. It's the latest episode here. This this is an incredible drop too by Brett Franklin. He was raised by a hedge witch. He lives in Battleground, Washington. He has a lot of entity contact happening on his suburb property. Goblins, Bigfoot, all of it, apports. We didn't even talk about apports, but apportations are also a part of the Bigfoot world. Because if you were to ask me what I think Bigfoot are, which nobody has, and I don't blame you because it's been a long day, I think Bigfoots are a land spirit. I think that's kind of what they told me are. Now, does that satisfy me as to what they really are? Not really. But they're of the land, they're of the spirit. They have physical qualities, they have ethereal qualities. I had a psychic by the name of Sarah Lemos. She was on a couple of Discovery channels. She's pretty well known in the circuit. And I handed her a hair to do a psychometry reading. She's a total skeptic, didn't even know what the hair was from. It could have been from a child. And she goes, oh my God, they're effing real. And I said, what? What are real? She goes, you gave me a Bigfoot hair. These things are real? And she goes, I'm picking up like on Fae energy. Whatever Fae are, she goes, these things, and I have goosebumps. I have this whole thing on camera. She goes, whatever they are, they're more holy than like the Dalai Lama. She goes, and I feel weird saying that, but she goes, you know, I'm getting that as a Buddhist, that they're bigger than that. And so now she speaks at Bigfoot events. So that's all because of that psychometry reading. So if you guys are curious about any more information, any questions here, we've been going at it. You probably got to close the shop. That's my strange universe. Allie and I obviously do this as a passion project. Is this just Bigfoot? Is it the universe? We don't know. We're just crazy kids doing our Bigfoot thing. And we'll see some of you at Manresa Castle, but that's my talk.
I do have a question.
And I bet you do. And you've been such a pleasure to work with.